So here we have a slightly modified view of the website, which was necessary in order to get this on a slide. So welcome to our website, Free the Animals by Force. We at Free the Animals by Force believe that people who eat meat are immoral and that we must do everything possible to stop them. And then here's some of the important stuff here. So we encourage those who care about all of God's creatures to take action. Oops, sorry about that. For instance, protest outside the sausage makers and chicken slaughterhouses. Protest outside fast food restaurants. So we have nothing specific here. We've got sausage makers, chicken slaughterhouses, protest outside fast food restaurants. Even take things further and free the animals by force. So I guess that's encouraging perhaps some intentional torts, right? But nothing specific that targets delicious sausage in Topeka, Kansas, or Kansas specifically. But let's look at the links. So we have a link to Sausage Manufacturers Association of America. Now, the question intentionally says that you can't actually go to the website and click. And the reason is because in the real world, of course, you'd be able to click these, but I have to set a limit to what's possible, especially because I made them up and there's no such websites. But what would you think would be behind this link, right? Where do you think it would take you? I mean, it's possible that there is a list of sausage makers on this website and that the Kansas company is one on the list. I don't know the answer to that. The same is true, right? Here's another that looks similar. I don't know what's there. Walk with the Animals. I have no idea what that might be. But these are just links to other entities' websites. It's not something that's being run by our clients, Free the Animals by Force. I mean, this is a sausage maker's website, and this is chicken farmer's website. And then the other thing we have here is want to support us. Click this link. And we don't know what's there. Now, I know that we've all seen links like this that have been on websites or buttons or what have you, and often they ask us to donate money, or we buy something, we buy a t-shirt or whatever it might be, but we have no idea what's actually there. So the issues that this is raising for me, I mean, this is a website, this is just screaming out at me that, Pavlovich needs to be looked at. Now, you guys know that Pavlovich is not a Supreme Court case, so Pavlovich doesn't necessarily control the outcome of this, and Pavlovich didn't occur in Kansas. So I definitely want to look at that, but I also need to then make sure I still analyze Supreme Court cases, because those are the ones that I know apply and control personal jurisdiction analysis. So ones that jump out, I've already mentioned Calder, so I definitely would be addressing that. But, I don't know how the court would approach this. We've looked, so when Pavlovich discussed Zippo, so that's our computer cases, where I'm going to go first and foremost, certainly. But all of those other general personal jurisdiction cases still potentially apply. So Worldwide Volkswagen, you guys have seen, Hansen versus Denkla, purposeful availment, right? That test is still very much a part of Supreme Court jurisprudence. Now, Asahi I have cited on page 2 of the outline, and Asahi isn't in your book in this edition, but you saw Nicastro, and Nicastro relies on Asahi, and so since 2011 I'd be citing Nicastro. But the principles are still the same, and one of the things that we now know since 2011 is just generally putting stuff out there, whether it be into the stream of commerce or otherwise, just generally putting stuff out isn't enough for the court. Foreseeability alone isn't enough. So that purposeful availment aspect, and not just of the United States market in general, but some sort of targeting of the state where the court sits, we know seems to be necessary in order for any court in that state to exercise personal jurisdiction. So those are the things that are jumping out at me. So from here, I'm just going to chat. I don't have a slide to actually write things on, but what I'd like you to do is go ahead and pull out that, it says Professor Kreder Civil Procedure Midterm Outline, Delicious Sausage Company, Inc. Okay, so go ahead and pull that out. It's just an outline. I know it's run-on sentences of what it is that I would have done if I had this exam to take. Now, I don't expect anybody in the first year of law school to be able to have come up with everything on these 5 pages in this outline, especially not in a 2.5 to 3 hour sit-down exam. It just wouldn't have been possible. So please don't look at this and feel intimidated. Oh my gosh, I wouldn't have done that. I'm the professor sitting there with all of my materials in front of me, and I'm trying to create something to push you. This midterm, as far as I'm concerned, isn't important for me to try to assess where you are. I use it as a teaching tool, what we call a formative tool, not an assessment tool. So I'm not trying to figure out whether you get it or not. I'm trying to show you how all of these things come together in an application type of way. I'm trying to help you, to push you to the next level so that you will be prepared for the next exams that come along. Now, don't forget, I have a bunch of practice exams on TWEN. Now, this is the first year that I'm teaching civil procedure in a 4-credit format. Everything in the past was 6 credits spread out over 2 semesters. So when you see fall and spring exams, the coverage will be a little different and the emphasis will be a little different than you have now. So in the fall, I would cover the first half of the class. In the spring, I would cover the second half, and the spring would pick up with complaints and pleading. So the emphasis and the depth of coverage in the first semester on personal jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction would go a little further than you will be getting this semester. So that means the essays that you see from the fall are probably going to go more in depth than you actually will. So they're great models, but don't feel completely intimidated if you don't think you can get there. I had more class time in the past to really push the students further on the very nitty-gritty aspects of internet jurisdiction and all other aspects of jurisdiction. So let's start with this outline. So I figure the most relevant thing screaming out is internet jurisdiction. So I'm going to start with that because I want to start with what's going to have the most points, right? Your objective on the test is to match the score sheet as closely as possible. It's not to have a beautiful essay. It's just to scoop up as many points as possible. So I'm going to lead off with what's the most relevant. That's internet jurisdiction. And I'm going to take the one case that we really covered, and then that cites Zippo, which you know is the leading case, but it doesn't make a lot of sense in a lot of ways in terms of the level of harm that can be inflicted on people. But I'm going to take those and I'm going to run with them. I'm going to squeeze them for all that they're worth. I'm going to use them for black letter law principles, and I'm going to do the analysis. Now, you may have chosen to go ahead, because it made more sense to you, to lead off with some of the more generic, if you will, Supreme Court cases that lay out the specific, personal jurisdiction, including specific jurisdiction, but personal jurisdiction principles. So you may have chosen to lead off with Hansen versus Denkla, Worldwide Volkswagen, Nee Castro, Shoe. You may have chosen to do that, and that's okay. I just wanted to show you how I would have approached it, which would have been probably to just jump right to the heart of the matter. Now, I can understand if you wouldn't have felt comfortable doing that. You're still going to get your points, but don't spend too much time going into the general cases and squeezing them for all of the analysis when you have something else that's right on point. That's why I laid it out this way. So You guys read Pavlovich. You guys read its discussion of Zippo. I would have laid out the test. I would have done a little bit of description with the facts of Pavlovich, but I probably would have focused more on Zippo because that, I told you guys, was the lead case. So the level of interactivity is the key there, right? Do we have a really active website or do we have a totally passive website? Now, Pavlovich, that website was probably more passive than what we have here. At least it sounds that way to me, but I think that is arguable. But it sounds like we're probably pretty close, right? So we have a couple of links here, but they go to outside websites. But the key difference, and I know we have this up on the screen still, is that want to support us bit, right? So I'm starring that right now. So the key difference is that want to support us link. So does that do enough to elevate this website beyond the passive category, which is where Pavlovich's website seemed to land, right, with no jurisdiction? Does that put us into that middle category where the commercial nature of the exchange of information becomes more important, and if there's cash being sent over the web, that's relevant. So at this point, we would focus on that, but I think at this point you also would have to bring in the fact that the people on the ground made allegations about dues paying. Right? So, did they pay that dues over this website? That's a way to use one of the facts that was given to you. Now, this particular essay is fact light, right? I tried to make it a little bit interesting by giving you an actual website, an actual cease and desist letter, and a very short memo from the partner to the associate. But the facts are really light. So you want to make sure you use every single one of them. And if any of them, and how I do that is I would go through and I would make check marks as I use things. So that dues stuff came up more than once. And I would make sure that I used that. And I think at this point you could pull that in. So once you finish with using Pavlovich Zippo, you still have to get into that Supreme Court stuff. So purposeful availment. And I've already mentioned the cases that you could cite for that. And you have to get into the fact that this website does not seem to target Kansas, but there were people on the ground in Kansas, in Topeka, outside of this particular plant. So are those people truly representatives of our client, Free the Animals by Force? I don't know, but I would address that here. And then that other section that I said we'd come back to in terms of facts to research, I would need to do a lot of research, factual research, to find out who actually was at these protests and what their true relationships were, not just descriptively, but also factually, what they were to my client. And of course, I need more information about this website. I need to know where these links go, what they do, whether there was any money paid. Maybe I can get some information about percentage of hits that were coming out of Kansas. Was there any way to, when I clicked this link to support us, was there some sort of announcement that there was going to be a protest in Kansas? I need to know all of that stuff, right? Because all of that ties into the purposeful availment analysis that I would need to do as backup. So I also mentioned before that Kreder and the effects test were jumping out to me because this, like Kreder, is another libel case. So I would use Kreder for all that it was worth. I would squeeze out all of the facts and really make a comparison between those facts and the facts that we have here. So in contrast to the Inquirer, which was a much larger company than Free the Animals by Force, which we've never heard of until we represented them here today, right? So the Inquirer reached a whole lot more people. There was also a finding in Kreder that California was its largest state of circulation, right? It got the most subscribers out of California. And the court, I mean, we questioned whether this was really completely honest, but the court said, and Shirley Jones, of course, lives in Hollywood, right? So we don't know whether that's exactly how a court would approach this kind of case here, right? It might adhere to that. It's been quite a while since Calder was decided, but you'd have to go ahead and make those comparisons. So in comparison to the Inquirer, this is a much smaller company. I would need to do research to find out what percentage of hits, what are these dues that they're talking about, how much of it's coming from Kansas. If 90% of the website's money is coming from Kansas, is a pretty good shot that our client can be sued in Kansas. So with those things being said, I think this video has done enough to convey my thoughts about the personal jurisdiction aspects of this question. So if you could please go to the next slide, so slide 4, we can get into the strategy issues, the factual research, as well as talk about the subject matter jurisdiction, which again, from years past, it wound up on page 4 in the strategy, but I increased its coverage emphasis for you, so that would have been more central. But nonetheless, I'm going to do it in order as what I have for this midterm outline. So see you at slide 4.